Well, let's shift to our trending topic. It's the psychology of Taylor Swift. And Taylor Swift's album, Lover, is dropping. So we thought we'd talk about the psychology behind this country pop crossover star. And I'm going to ask you, usually I go around and ask the same question at the beginning. I'm going to ask each of you a different question because I think you each have a different perspective on this. But I'm going to start backwards. I'm going to start with Jonathan. How do you think Taylor Swift lines up as a songwriter? And I'll give you a little backstory for this. I have at least one friend that is just incensed that people think that she is a all-time great songwriter. And then I have some other folks I know and some things I've read that just say, no, she's a prodigy. Like she is a genius in not only for her age, but in general. As a songwriter, what's your take on her?
As a songwriter and as someone that would count themselves a casual or marginal fan, I think she is a prodigy. That I think that the amount of hooks and melody that she's able to craft, as well as the lyrics and merging them together, at her age, the number of hits that she has had is remarkable. I think people undervalue it because she is a woman, because she is a young woman, because she started when she was a young teen, as well as because she started out in country. We've just listed all the things from an entertainment and music standpoint. You're going to be undervalued here in American culture. And so I do think that she is a brilliant songwriter. I got to give her props.
I would lean that way myself. Emma Kate, let me ask you this. You've got your ear to the ground for how young adult women, teenage girls feel about Taylor Swift. Obviously, there's a variety of opinion, but what do you think the general take on her is among younger women?
You know, it's hard to say right now because I do think it's fairly mixed. And I think there's a lot of push coming from the media related to that. And oftentimes we're only getting one side of a story and it's biased to some extent. And so when I think of Taylor Swift, I really do try to focus on the good deeds that she does. I mean, she really tries hard to advocate for important causes. It seems like she's very intentional. And I think a lot of people, regardless of what age demographic you're in, can at least respect that.
So to transition into more of the psychology of it, I want to ask Frank something that is speculative, but I just want you to weigh in on this. We've had at least one psychologist who says, and by the way, before I ask this question, we can't diagnose somebody from afar. We don't do that. We don't diagnose someone that we don't know, but just in terms of traits, observable traits. We've had at least one psychologist who suggested Taylor Swift has this very kind of scripted sort of persona. Like if she gets an award, it's the same facial expression. It's the same sort of almost like canned response to the surprise of it. There's this stuff with her relationships that the person floated the idea, is this someone that's on the spectrum in a mild way? And that would potentially explain some of her sort of obsessive focus on being awesome at a particular thing, in this case, songwriting. Or do you think that's way off the mark? Obviously, we're not trying to diagnose her, but just like, do you think those traits put you more in the mind of someone that would be on the spectrum?
I do. The way I describe it is having lemon in the water.
Which
I think it's what has given lemon in the water is basically, I don't use the word Asperger's or autism as much as I say you put lemon in a glass of water, it tastes better. And people on the spectrum are sort of the lemon for humanity, and I think they make the world more interesting. But I think if you look at Bob Dylan or, you look at different songwriters that are sort of at the top of their game and are seeing patterns or like what Jonathan said, these little, what are they called? Not clips, the little hooks that I don't think it's any accident she's able to do that and hear it. And I agree with sort of the canned responses, but also I feel like she's sort of another famous Aspie girl, and I'll just say someone with Lemon in the Water is Daryl Hannah, who was in Blade Runner and Splash. And a lot of these actors and actresses that are on the spectrum are excellent mimics. And I think she is mimicking some of the behaviors that she's seen from other people. But also, I just don't think she's got the humans figured out. I know she's very justice-oriented, which also falls with having Lemon in the Water, but she grew up with a dad who worked for Merrill Lynch. So I would imagine he was very successful. She was in social situations where you're going to have to mimic those that are around you to not be awkward, to learn social graces, but then it sort of becomes the script. I think that probably would explain some of the troubles she has in her relationships, but also how blunt she is in her music, where she's maybe sharing things she doesn't necessarily need to share or should, and doesn't recognize that maybe that's not okay.
This is Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
I think and I know we're just speculating, but right there, it means every teenager and young adult is on the Lemon continuum. If they overshare and they observe other people to figure out how to behave socially or interpersonally. I mean, I'm not disputing that.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you see it? I'll ask you and Emma Kate this. Do you see what Frank's saying, and do you have some agreement with that as a possibility, or do you think you don't see it that way?
Well, I see what he's observing. I'm not a specialist in the autism spectrum, people working with Asperger's, so I can't even begin to sort of like filter through that lens. For me, I do see what he's picking up on, and I tend to sort of register in a couple things. One is I think that Taylor Swift, really her popularity came on the onset of social media. And so I think she is sort of one of the pioneers, and everyone else has kind of learned from her mistakes, whereas she really is at the front end of building a fandom through social media platforms, this idea of sharing, oversharing. I think one of the things she is a textbook example of, even if this is unintentional, even if she hasn't learned from it, is what most people fall victim to with social media, which is passive-aggressive communication and behavior. Like that really, I think, is at the heart of what a lot of people find unappealing about Taylor Swift as a celebrity, is that she is just cryptic enough that you have to think about who she's talking about in the song, but then it becomes very clear. And then all of her conversation interaction lets you know she's talking about this celebrity that she's recently broken up with. And I do think, and I don't know if these people are on the spectrum, but I just come across people that you just see the effort they put in to feel popular or noticed or liked. And I feel like Taylor Swift, and this is just a personal thing, I feel like I can see the strings. I feel like I can see the effort she puts into being likable or noticed or to say something meaningful and profound. And there are just some people that come across that way, that you just sort of see the effort and the breath that it takes for them.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of piggyback on what both of you guys have said. So I think you can definitely see some of the traits where there are aspects of her that feel very scripted and it comes across as inauthentic. So the strings, as Heatherly's talking about. At the same time, though, I feel like she is very tuned in, and she's actually extremely perceptive because I don't think she overshares without doing it intentionally and for some purpose. Now, whether or not we know what the actual agenda is for that, it's unclear. But regardless, I think she is always kind of defined in a certain way. And I think this is kind of an overarching conversation too, where we try to put people in a box to understand them, trying to say, oh, is she on the spectrum? Is she not on a spectrum? The reality is I think she is somebody who's always trying to push how people view her, to push the boundaries of their understanding. I think with the Kim Kardashian situation and the snakes. And then, she wasn't this fluffy, I actually liked Bad Taylor. Like I liked the more like rebel side of her because it felt more real to me. It didn't feel
PG-14
fluffy.
Taylor.
Yeah. But so I think I see flavors of spectrum, but at the same time though, I think she is wildly intelligent and very, very tuned into social cues and social nuances. And so I think I disagree to an extent.
And is that, just to clarify, is she tuned into social nuances and cues, or is it a calculation? Is it a kind of curated image or curated response? I don't know. I mean, I don't presume to know, but is that what you're picking up on?
Yeah, so I don't know either, but I think she can't be oblivious in the position she's in, especially given most celebrities have a team around them that are at least going to inform them of this. But my perception, at least, and again, this is an opinion, is she's more perceptive than people give her credit.
Well, let's talk about what's already been raised about her relationships. And she's someone that her relationships take center stage, not just because she's had a number of them, but because invariably she writes about them. And as Jonathan says, she writes about them in cryptic ways, but in ways that are people can figure out from timelines and content who she's talking about. Do you think that she is someone, as far as how you observe her within those relationships, that is, and I'll start with Emma Kate with this. If she weren't famous and she didn't have a platform to write songs about, are her relationships any different than anyone else her age?
Probably not, to be honest. I mean, when you think about just identity development and trying to figure out who you are, you're going to bounce back and forth between somebody that, okay, you're attracted to this quality about them and you're trying to figure out, okay, are these qualities that I have? Do I like these things? And given she's on this world stage, it's really fascinating to see how she chooses to share what she does share. And I would just love to be a fly on the wall and hear her in her private world, because I think she's an interesting lady.
Yeah, I think I mean, I keep seeing her through that lemon lens a little bit. Is some women, and I guess that's a generalization, but they'll try on all these different identities because they're not sure who they are, what they want to be. An analogy would be cosplay, which is costume play, where you're like, okay, I'm going to try on this persona, I'm going to try this person, I'm going to try that person, and not necessarily reading those social relationships very well and not understanding the complexity of a romantic relationship that you're getting into. And I mean, I don't know her obviously, but like some of the stuff that when I see interviews with her, it just seems a little odd. And
Is that the most normal person in the room?
Yeah, right. And a lot of the people that she has been involved with they seem to be very extroverted, very complicated people that I think would be hard to sort of figure out and stick with. And then you get sort of stuck on that maybe rigidity about what happened, and now you're so stuck on it, you're going to write a song about it and you're going to put it out there, and it's going to be a little weird.
Well, I guess one of the things I keep thinking about, I mean, what you just described seems like a very normal situation for anyone in a relationship where we're all very complicated beings and we have nuances and flavors. And even then you could know somebody your whole life without actually knowing them. I mean, there are things that we just keep to ourselves or aspects of ourselves that we're not proud of. And I always think of Carl Jung in The Shadow. He also had another idea of the mirror, right? So when you are in a relationship, there are those pieces of somebody else that tend to be mirrored that are you and them. And I know that's not really an eloquent way of saying that, but I can't help but wonder if she's trying to figure out aspects of herself through all of these relationships, or at least that would be my hope, is that she's working through things. But it just seems like, I don't know, I think we're putting her in a box when there's more to it.
Well, and I mean, when we think about a relationship, I tend to give her a pass because when you think about how young she was when she started in this industry, and she became very successful very early on at a very young age. I don't think she's ever had any timeline in her life where she's able to have just a normal, anonymous, kind of healthy relationship that's not in the spotlight without there being a tremendous power or influence differential in terms of like, and then just the stress that comes with being a celebrity, the stress that comes with the notoriety of being known that you're involved or dating Taylor Swift. And then she's had some very high profile relationships with other celebrities. So then you have two different kind of scheduling conflicts and distance and all these other elements. Like, honestly, I know it's possible, but I think the deck is kind of stacked against her in a number of ways. It doesn't mean it's not impossible, but there are a lot of variables that someone like Taylor Swift really is going to have to figure out in order to meet the right person, have the ability to put the commitment into it, to not have everything under a microscope. I mean, that's just a lot for a relationship.
Right. And you add that to the people that she's going to tend to be in relationship with are people in the strata that she's in terms of their own celebrity or close enough. And so then you've got two people that are contending with that same stuff. And then the relationship itself becomes even more complicated and more difficult. One thing that's interesting, I don't know this to be true, but just piecing together from information that we have, it does also seem like she seems to be the one to end the relationship quicker than the guy. Like, it seems like she's doing more of the kicking to the curb than the guy is with her, which would be interesting if she didn't really get humans or get relationships. You would think it would probably be the other way around. I don't know. It's speculative. But let me ask one more thing about her. She's done a fair amount of advocacy in the political realm, particularly for LGBTQ community. What's your take on her involvement as a social advocate? Emma Kate.
I use the word intention purposely because I think she is very strategic about what causes she chooses to involve herself with, knowing her platform, knowing her words will sway potentially millions of people. And I think that's really critical and important. And I know I personally really appreciated when she tried to address a sexual misconduct sort of situation where she charged the person $1 or she was only requesting $1 for the issue, but just to highlight it, bring it to light, to continue the dialogue and the conversation about something that was important for her.
Frank, any thoughts?
I think it is. I don't know what the real impact is of her social advocacy, but I think there is a segment of the population that is just tone deaf. And it's unfortunate because I think it's tone deaf from people thinking, oh, look at her, white woman, made $180 million last year, young, pop star. What does she know about pain? What does she know about discomfort? And I think there's a segment of the population that's just like, whatever, just sing your songs and leave me alone.
When I think about, she got a lot of criticism for not endorsing Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election. She got a lot of criticism up until recently about how she really hadn't been that outwardly aligning or as an ally for the LGBTQ community. And I think she's just a byproduct of a period of time where, and I remember this, it's like there was a period of time where being known or personal branding through advocacy and alliances really wasn't necessarily at the forefront. Like, she was known as a musician, and that was good enough. And I think both because of our era at the time that we're seeing in American culture, but I also think the evolution of technology and social media as a platform for sharing your personal views. I think celebrities, right or wrong, good or bad, but they're not allowed to sort of be passive in terms of issues. They are going to be critiqued one way or the other. They're going to either be attacked for not giving a position, or they're going to be attacked for those that disagree with her position. And I think she is a great entry point of someone that's had to learn that in the public's eye, that she used to just sort of take a casual step back perspective. And now our culture demands our celebrities give an account of where they stand on a number of different issues. And I think she has evolved. Now, whether it was calculated or whether she's responding to her culture, I don't know. But that's how I would interpret the arc of her advocacy.
I would assume she's calculated because one of Taylor Swift's fun little facts is she hides Easter eggs in everything. So she is hiding information in all of her Instagram posts about next album or next thing. And for the record, we were just talking about the relationship status. There is current gossip that she is actually engaged to her current boyfriend based on some of the lyrics within her new album that is coming out. So, fun fact.
How about that?
That is a fun fact.
Fun fact. Well, we'd love to hear your fun facts and your thoughts on Taylor Swift. You can let us know by tweeting at @shrink_tank or write us at feedback@shrinktank.com. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Shrink Tank podcast. If you want to support our show, give us a rating on Apple Podcasts and subscribe. If you like the episode, you can find more content exploring the intersection of pop culture and psychology by visiting us at shrinktank.com. You can also watch the video version of our podcast on the YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out the show notes of this episode for details on today's trending topics, as well as any products that we mention in our shows. We welcome your feedback. For suggestions or comments on the show, tweet us, shrink_tank, message us on our Facebook page, or shoot us an email at feedback@shrinktank.com. Our producer and theme music composer is Sean Beck. Our associate producer and social media guru is Mariel Butler. For Emma Kate Wright, Jonathan Heatherly, and Frank Gaskell in Charlotte, I'm Dave Verhagen in Nashville. Tell all your friends about us and make it a great week.
Shrink Tank.